This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. I'm Tony Pesta, joined by Corey Walsh, and I have to say, I'm personally very happy today. I woke up feeling great because you know what? The Cleveland Cavaliers just stomped the New York Knicks 142-105. It was an absolute beatdown. It's the most points that Cleveland has scored on New York this decade. And I believe it was also the Knicks' biggest loss of the 2020s as well. So it was a cathartic 37-point victory. Corey, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling as good as we can feel. You know, vibes are good. There's been some stuff thrown around by the team in pressers that would make you feel like maybe there's a little salt in this victory, but overall, not much more you could ask for from the Cavs than what they gave. Tony and I were on the playback going into that game, and we both kind of were in the sentiment that we just hope the Cavs take all the narratives that have been thrown out since 2022, 2023 and put it into action. And it's very safe to say that they obviously care what we have to say because they followed our wishes.
Yeah, that absolutely. I mean, you and me both said that we hope/believe that this is the game the Cavs finally make a statement and show everyone that things have changed since 2023. They're not the same team that collapsed. That's exactly what they did. Even Mobley talked about entering the game with like a killer's mentality, stepping on their throat from the jump. And it was really over by the end of the first half. Like we saw a number of Cavalanche runs. The offense looked super free. They didn't get jammed up or beaten up on the glass like they did before. Instead, they completely flipped the table. So me and Corey are going to talk all about yesterday's game in today's episode. But before we get started, I want to ask that you follow us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. If you enjoy the show, hit the description to find all of our links. And while you're at it, please follow me on TikTok. I'm posting short form content over there, and I'd really appreciate if you checked it out. So yeah, as we already said, the Cavs last night, they just put belt to ass. I mean, there's no other way to put it. That's what they did. They came out aggressive. They made the statement that we were hoping they would make. But Corey, I want to start here because I thought this was interesting, and you already mentioned it a little bit. Ty Jerome with a little bit of spice in the post-game presser. So they asked him basically a pretty simple question. You know, what's the biggest difference between the previous matchups with the Knicks and what we just saw tonight and what we've seen this season, really? And Ty Jerome basically said, hey, it's the new coaching staff. That's the biggest difference. It's the coaching staff. So was he right, or is he leaving out some context? What were your what's your takeaway from Ty Jerome's comments?
As much as I'd love to lean into like the narrative that Ty Jerome is putting out there, I think it's a half truth. I think obviously philosophically this team is different than the JB Bickerstaff run teams of the past. Those that liked to play a slower level of offense, those that like to grit your way down, kind of in a similar way that Thibodeau had done in recent years as well before this past season. But it's unfair to say that, yeah, it's JB's fault that the Cavs were never able to climb this Knicks hurdle. I think it's also a testament to not only to Kenny, but to Kobe Altman as well, that he has built the Cavs completely differently than they were back in that series that everyone refers to death in 2022 and 2023. This team is so different, not only in terms of how they're coached, but also they are so much more built for playoff basketball and a type of competitive basketball that surpasses regular season play. The Cavs were really small in those Knicks series. I know everyone always says, oh, the Cavs have to be a tall team. They have 2 7-footers. It's everyone else was not really fitting the role or stereotypical type of prospect that you would have for those design spots. But yeah, I also don't want to say that Ty Jerome is just throwing salt in the JB wound either, because obviously this Cavs team is taken to a whole nother level in a way that we really haven't seen from teams before, with Kenny Atkinson taking over a team that already was reaching a pretty consistent level of competitive play since at least, I mean, the only one that really comes to mind to this level is Steve Kerr for Mark Jackson. But I think Ty Jerome is right, but he's not 100%. You can't just throw all the shade on JB as to why the Cavs had shortcomings. There were a lot of other issues as well, with injuries as well playing a part. It felt like every postseason for the Cavs too.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with everything you said there. And I wonder, it definitely seemed intentional from Ty Jerome, but I wonder how intentional it was, like how much he was actually trying to throw JB under the bus, because I know I wrote the story for Fearless Word yesterday on those comments, and it was tough for me to navigate too, because I'm like, yeah, like you said, like he is right to an extent. The coaching staff has changed everything. Kenny Atkinson has unlocked this offense in a way that felt just impossible under JB. JB had, he had his limitations, but he was still a good coach. And really, it doesn't feel fair to say that that's the only thing that changed. Well, to be fair, Ty Jerome didn't say it was the only thing that changed. He said it was the biggest thing. So I think that's maybe true, but the rosters changed too. And even the players have gotten better. And the number one thing that I thought was funny, Ty Jerome leaving out some very, very important context. He wasn't even on the roster in 2023, and he wasn't available to play all of last season. And that would have been huge. Just last night, Jerome had 19 points in 19 minutes. He's been one of the most ridiculous players in the NBA this year. I don't know if you saw this stat today that's going around on Twitter, but Jerome is in the 100th percentile in shot making efficiency, and he's in the 3rd percentile in shot quality. So basically, he's taking the most difficult shots in the NBA and making them at a higher rate than just about anybody else. Even the guys who are taking way easier shots. That's an absurd stat. I don't even know how to I can't even wrap that around my brain. And we're 2/3 of the way through the season. So it's not like he was having a hot stretch of games. He's been a difference maker for the Cavs all season with this scoring off the bench. So that's important. Lord knows those JB teams could have used another creator like Ty Jerome. But, as we already said, Kenny has also gotten more out of everyone on the roster, probably Jerome included. Like if Jerome was healthy and available last year, maybe he isn't as effective as he is right now under a different coaching staff.
Yeah, it feels like in order to praise one coach, you kind of have to throw dirt on the other one in this type of context. It's like, it's fine to say and fair, and obviously to say that Kenny has gotten more juice out of the players in his short tenure than it feels like JB necessarily did. But that's not also saying that JB didn't get a lot out of the Cavs as well. I feel like they were punching above their skill level for a few seasons in a row under JB. And then it just plateaued at some point. It's not that I feel like history rewrites itself the further you are away from it. And I think it's easy just to say, oh man, JB was such a bad coach because look at how the Cavs are playing now, versus back in like 2021, we were throwing parades at how competitive the Cavs were playing at the time and thinking that JB was an excellent coach and what a culture setter and all this stuff. And it's just because they kept on staying at that level and not ascending that it became JB's the problem. JB's a bad coach. And I think the greatest testament that JB wasn't the fault of the Cavs to a degree is that look what he's doing in Detroit too. I wouldn't say that Detroit team is necessarily the most talented team in the Eastern Conference. I think that there are teams behind them that have more talented rosters than they have, and they're still punching at above their level. JB is a culture setting coach, and that's fine. But Kenny Atkinson obviously coaches to a whole nother level than JB. But would a team scoff at the idea of JB Bickerstaff at this point? I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I mean, JB is a very fine coach, and he's having another good year in Detroit. Like you said, setting another culture, proving that he can kind of jumpstart a rebuild and get to that next phase. And look, Kenny Atkinson, he's the front runner for Coach of the Year for a reason. But if you look at the short list, yeah, Kenny's kind of running away with it, but JB's on that list. He's doing a great job in Detroit. So I definitely don't want to, tear down JB to lift up Kenny. I think it really was a perfect storm of the players developing individually, improving, finding some chemistry, getting healthy is another big thing. And then Kenny coming in with a fresh take on the offense that is kind of just gelled perfectly. I want to say one more thing on Ty Jerome before we move on. But the fact that he's just been pouring on buckets so easily, even when he's, crowded and taking these difficult floaters, it's been such a luxury. And the 3-point shooting has been unbelievable. This is another stat that I pulled today. Ty Jerome on shots that are long range, so 25 to 29 feet. He's shooting the best percentage in the NBA for a minimum of 100 attempts at 47.6%. So he's shooting 47.6% on 25 to 29 foot shots. That's actually the third highest percentage of the last 12 seasons. Only Luke Kennard and Joe Harris shot better. So Ty Jerome is on another planet right now. And he hasn't crashed down to earth yet, even though we thought maybe back in December, the real Ty Jerome was starting to come out and he kind of came down a little bit. He's found it again. He is shooting the lights out from every spot on the floor. He's been such a game changer.
Yeah, it feels like for all the talk of who's going to kind of be the Joe Harris, Kyle Korver type of this iteration of the Atkinson offense, everyone thought it was going to be Sam Merrill, but maybe it really is just Ty Jerome.
Yes, the typhoon coming out swinging, man. It's such a crazy time watching him play. I can't believe that he's been such a huge piece of this team after, a lot of us wondered if he'd even be in the rotation. Even Kenny said like he wasn't sure if Ty was going to be in the rotation when he first got the job, but now he should be getting more 6 man of the year buzz. So I want to push that. I don't think he's going to win it, but he should definitely be on the short list. And right now he's kind of not really even in the discussion. But I want to move on and talk about Evan Mobley now because he's been tearing it up all month long. He was great again last night against the Knicks. I think this matchup is kind of the same theme, same ballpark as what we would expect in a potential Celtics or Thunder series where, Mobley needs to dominate this matchup, right? For the Cavs to be a serious contender, you need Mobley to go off. And he's had strong games against all those teams this year. Last night against the Knicks, he puts up 21 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals, all in just 24 minutes. Corey, what did you see from Mobley last night?
I think I saw the greatest comparison of where Mobley started his career with Cleveland versus where it is now, because for the 20th time, I feel like we mentioned it in the past 24 hours. In 2022, 2023, that Knicks series for Mobley, all the excitement that was gearing up heading into that series, I feel like that kind of deflated the Mobley momentum for a little bit. There was a lot of second guessing. Mobley is someone who really flashes when I feel like he doesn't really second guess himself and he kind of goes off of his instincts. The minute he starts thinking too much, the game really speeds up too fast for him. We see a lot of deer in headlight looks. We see a lot of hesitation. We see a lot of him just kind of looking around, hoping that someone can bail him out at times. Last night was not one of those games for Mobley. When the offense is really humming and it feels like he can kind of go along with the flow of the offense is when he really ascends to kind of leading the offense in a way, which sounds, we've complained about it on Playback a few times, that it feels like Mobley has his best games when everything gets going. And you even mentioned too at one point that you wish we could see a Mobley game in which he kind of has a great game when the Cavs are losing, just so we can kind of see him try to buoy the team up, because usually that's something that's reserved for Garland or Mitchell. And I'm not trying to say that Mobley deserves any less praise for how he played last night, because I still think it's a huge showing of his development. He wasn't second guessing. He was taking advantage, making Karl Anthony Towns' life hell, Precious Achua's life hell. Huck Porty's life hell. Huck Porty had a terrible day. But overall, like, we were seeing him take shots, pull up threes in transition. We were seeing him connect the offense. It was just another great testament, not only to Mobley, but to Atkinson and this coaching staff for showing how far along Mobley is compared to where we thought he was at the start of the year.
Yeah. I feel like if you just pulled up old Junkyard Pod episodes, we've probably said over and over and over again that confidence is the key for Evan Mobley. He needs to play confident. He needs to be aggressive, even if he fails, right? Even if it's a missed shot or a turnover, like, you just got to go make your move without thinking too much about it. And that's what we've been seeing. I think Mobley clearly is pushing himself into all NBA discussions over the last month or so. I also saw a stat. I'm pretty sure it's Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley shot 11 for 11 when defended by Karl Anthony Towns last night. So they had him struggling. And I feel like I think there was a similar stat for Darius Garland over Karl Anthony Towns in their first matchup of the year. I didn't pull that one up, but they've had a lot of success against Cat. And for Mobley, over his last 6 games, he's averaging 23 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2.5 blocks, and 1 steal per game. He's doing a little bit of everything at the highest level. And the most important thing is, while he's doing it, he looks like a guy who's confident. And he looks like a guy who opposing teams just have no answer for. You mentioned it. The Knicks front court was decimated by Mobley. The Achua Huck Porty minutes, the Huck Chua lineup Just stood no chance. Mobley was spinning on that thing. They couldn't do anything to stop him.
Oh, God.
In all seriousness, though, Mobley, last night included, he's just had a handful of games in a row where he looks like a total monster. And no one really has a chance against him when he's playing this confident. And when he's getting fed by his teammates, like you kind of mentioned it a little bit, he looks great when the team is rolling. I would love to see a game where Evan Mobley, that the Cavs are struggling and the Cavs decide to just put the ball in his hands and let them carry him. Or, sorry, wrong, the other way around. Let Mobley carry them. But we haven't really seen that. But last night, it wasn't needed because Mobley was just dominating and there was nothing New York could do to stop him.
Yeah, I feel like this game, I know it seems a little knee-jerk reactionary, but this combined with the fact that the Knicks are 0-6 against like the Thunder, Cavs, and Celtics, to me, I don't think this roster is constructed for the Cavs to really consider them a postseason hurdle the same way that Boston is. I think when we discuss teams that the Cavs need to leapfrog in order to kind of show that their window is appropriately set for now, the Knicks no longer to me are in that. And that kind of all like, it's mostly because of the Karl Anthony Towns thing for them. I think last night in regular season basketball play, Karl Anthony Towns looked like he was just having a bad time. He was frustrated. He was visibly just not right for that game. And that's regular season basketball. Like, it's fair to say, yeah, they were down Josh Hart and Mitchell Robinson, but the presence of those two players does not swing the pendulum enough to where the Cavs aren't going to be going at Karl Anthony Towns the way they have in these past few games that they've played the Knicks. I think that they can attack them in a way that they really can't attack Boston. The Knicks aren't built for what the Cavs have currently. And as the Cavs have gotten taller and have added more wing depth, they've now become a more stout defensive matchup for a team that's very offense oriented. This isn't the same Knicks teams with Thibodeau that we've seen over the past few years where they can kind of slog you down. They're just hoping that they can outshoot you and get you a few stops as they create their separation. And to be honest, this team's also very injury prone as well. I don't really see a case in which the Cavs should kind of be worrying or avoiding matchups with the Knicks. I think a round 2 matchup against the Knicks at this point is something that the Cavs should really be salivating at the opportunity for.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm really not too worried about the Knicks at this point. As far as Karl Anthony Towns goes, he's a fantastic player, but like, look, Josh Hart and Mitchell Robinson will help. I know a lot of Knicks fans were pointing to that. They would definitely help, but the Cavs have too many options too many players that can target Karl Anthony Towns. You're not going to be able to hide him. If you have Karl Anthony Towns guarding Mobley or Allen, he's going to be in the pick and roll. Like, they're just, if he tries to hide on someone else, they'll let DeAndre Hunter set the screen. They'll let Max Strus set the screen. Like, there's nowhere for him to hide. And yeah, I don't think the Knicks are quite built to give the Cavs any of the same problems that they did back in 2023. And I also think the Cavs are way more equipped to deal with those problems if they were to face them at some point. And really, I think what we're saying here is we can put the 2023 series to bed. I think this is the funeral for those discussions, that narrative. I know it's just the regular season, so it's weird to take a victory lap, but I just don't think any of those same problems are a problem anymore. So I want to officially say that the 2023 narrative, that series, the corpse of Danny Green can finally rest. We no longer have to bring it up. We can move on, Cavs fans. It's okay to move on now. And speaking of moving on, let's move on to our next topic. DeAndre Hunter, the newest Cavalier. He's been leaving first impressions. You can talk about this game or just his first few games in Cleveland. Corey, what are you getting from DeAndre Hunter so far?
I'm getting to the point where I'm a little upset that the Cavs haven't pushed the DeAndre Hunter starting button yet. I feel like continuity makes a lot of sense for regular season basketball. You know, you want to keep things status quo so it translates into the postseason. But I think especially as the Cavs look as if they're going to hit the Eastern Conference Finals or the Finals, I don't see a world in which Max Strus can possibly start in either of those series if hypothetically they play the Celtics and Thunder, if everything goes chalk, which obviously the NBA things rarely ever go that chalk. But DeAndre Hunter has shown that he can elevate the team's defense to a level where they can get out to starts, as we saw in that Timberwolves game where the Timberwolves were gasping for oxygen. It felt like the entire first quarter, wondering if something could possibly go their way at some point. And even in his minutes where he comes off the bench too, as we saw in the Knicks series, the Knicks game, him and Ty Jerome were basically an offense of their own. Everyone else were just bystanders by comparison. Hunter can knock down threes just like Strus can. I don't feel like Hunter is as streaky as a shooter as Strus is. I would say that Strus is probably a better facilitator of the ball than Hunter is. But if you're playing Hunter at the 4 or the 3, I don't really need my 3 or 4 to kind of push the ball and play pick and roll with the bigs as well as Strus does. So I think Hunter's played really well. I think the trade has easily already shown proof of concept. I also just think that if you really want to see what this is capable of, let's say you give it a try, it doesn't work out, but at least you now know going into the postseason what buttons work and what don't. You don't have to find out when it's dire straits.
Yeah, you don't want to turn to that starting lineup for the first time in playoff time. And I do agree. Listen, I'm a big Max Strus fan, but I think DeAndre Hunter is just the obvious starter for this team. And even it's a good point you mentioned the 3-point shooting. I think one of the main reasons why Max Strus has been kind of slotted into that, aside from his playmaking and everything, the core reason we added him is because he's supposed to be the volume shooter. DeAndre Hunter might be a better shooter than him at this stage right now. So even that factor, you probably just start DeAndre Hunter. But I do love Max Strus. I think he had a really good game despite the lack of scoring. But I also think he's better suited to be a 6-man. So I think that's just a good pivot for the Cavs to make. But focusing on Hunter, last night, 16 points in just 19 minutes. He went 4-4 from deep. Overall, to start his career with the Cavs, he's shooting 13 for 21. He's hitting over 3 a game, so he's been on fire since joining the team. And I think we're seeing the versatility and athleticism that we've been begging for on the wing from this Cavs team. Last night, he took a jump shot over Jalen Brunson, and it looked like he was shooting over a chair because Brunson just he didn't have the height to contest that high release. And when you think about it, how many Cavs shooters can say that or do that? It's like Dean Wade and Evan Mobley who have the height to do that, but neither one of them really shoot with any sort of volume. So getting a guy like Hunter who can just rise up for a jumper over basically anyone, that's a whole new option for this Cavs offense. And then defense. This is another thing that we haven't really touched on, but Cavs offense was a powerhouse last night. They were almost more impressive on defense, holding New York to 105 points, the second best offense in the NBA, really shutting off their water the entire time. We mentioned it on the playback stream as the game was going on. The Knicks were not really generating the types of shots that you would expect them to win a game behind. It was a lot of Achua floaters, Karl-Anthony Towns post-ups, even Jalen Brunson trying to go to the post. They weren't driving and kicking and getting the open 3-pointers that you would expect that the Knicks have been relying on this year. So the Cavs just kind of baited them perfectly, played fantastic defense, and DeAndre Hunter was a part of that. His switchability, I would love to see him rebound the ball a little bit more. I don't think he even had a rebound yesterday, but his overall size does make a difference. Again, the fact that you can switch everything with him, trust your one-on-one defense. Last night, there was a play where I think in the first half, he sprinted back in transition and stopped a layup at the rim. And if you think in previous games, that would be Niang where Hunter is. So you probably aren't getting that stop in transition if you make that switch. So the fact that you get this athleticism, this size, both ends of the floor, Hunter, when we traded for him, it seemed like it was going to be a seamless fit on paper. And so far, I would say it's been a seamless fit on the court as well. And I agree, he should probably be starting.
Yeah, it's just one of those things you don't want to play hypothetical, oh, it'd be great if, and then we get to a Boston series or a series where we're requiring more size and we just go oh man, now we'll see what we got with Hunter. Obviously there's going to be sequences in regular season games where Hunter is with the core 4 at one point or another, but you're not going to get the same amount of reps. And I know I'm not advocating for a situation either where I'm saying Strus should play less than he is now. It just starting the game. Starts to the game have been what killed the Cavs in these Celtics games. It's been slow starts every time. It killed them in Houston games. And I feel like the challenge is similar roster wise for Houston than it is for Boston, where they're just taller physical teams that seem to get out to hot starts against the Cavs and they have to claw back. Trying to see how Hunter can counter those would be something that would translate to postseason play, not how can we try to make it so Max Strus's life doesn't suck for the opening quarter of games.
Yeah. And that's a really great point that you just mentioned right there. And I want anyone who it was either typing a comment or had already posted a comment before they heard this part, neither one of us are saying Max Strus should be out of the rotation or that his minutes should be cut. We just think Hunter makes more sense in the starting lineup. We just want to change where they're playing because, yeah, like against the Celtics, you're going to need DeAndre Hunter out there. Again, I've said it a couple times. I love Max Strus, but I don't want him trying to defend Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. Just have Hunter
Porzingis.
Yeah, or Porzingis. Just have Hunter do it, and Strus can come off the bench, and he's going at Peyton Pritchard or Sam Hauser, right? Like that just makes more sense for this team long term. But yeah, overall, Hunter has been great, and I'm very happy with the trade. I want to quickly move on. There's two quick things that I want to get to. The first one is Dean Wade and Isaac Okoro. They make their return after both of them missing like 14 games, basically. They're working their way back. They didn't do anything too special. Okoro had a pretty decent game yesterday, but I think they fit in pretty well. And it's just a blessing to go from so thin on the wing to now having 3-4 guys who can play that position. Even Max Strus can play that position in a pinch. We saw a lineup of Mitchell, Okoro, Hunter, Wade, and Mobley just for a brief moment, but it had me super intrigued. And even I think Mitchell said the lineup was, quote, dope. So I can't wait to see more of that dope lineup. Just the type of defensive units that this version of the Cavs can roll out. And Javonte Green isn't even on the team yet. So he's still reportedly going to be joining once he clears waivers. That adds another layer to the defense. They were so good last night. And they've really addressed their two biggest, or just their biggest gap, which is the wing, and honestly back up big to a degree too, because Hunter can play the backup four. So Wade and Okoro being back gives you that much more versatility, that much more flexibility with the lineups. And I'm really excited to see them get initiated again with this team.
Yeah, it's funny to think a month ago we're being like, how can the Cavs overcome this lack of size and defensive capability issue against wings? And now we're about to be in a situation where we could have 4 players who are all capable of guarding taller 3s and 4s. We're eating well tonight, Tony.
Yeah.
To say the least.
It's so good, man. It went from save me Dean Wade to now Dean Wade is just a luxury. It's like, wow, we got Dean Wade too. This is amazing. When before if you didn't have Dean Wade, you didn't have much out there. So things have definitely changed. And I'm very excited. I'm also excited because Okoro, he had a 3. He looked, he's making plays out of the short roll. He's looking good. He's looking very good. But we're going to go ahead and move in. This is the last topic that I had. Feel free to add anything else if there's another take you wanted to drop. But I have to talk about Donovan Mitchell because he looked like an absolute superstar yesterday. He had 27 points and 5 assists, again, in only 25 minutes. So all these stats, like, they look impressive, but they're even more impressive when you consider it's all happening in like 25 minutes or less. Mitchell was 10 of 15 from the floor. He was in a groove all night. He really set the tone with his scoring. And the reason why I wanted to make sure I gave him a shout out is because everyone was so worried in like early January after his stinker against OKC, really back-to-back stinkers against OKC. People were worried, is he washed up? Is he losing his athleticism? All these different things. Well, now he's trying to dunk on literally everybody, almost to his own detriment. Like he's trying some really bold dunks. And since that OKC game where I think he had just 8 points, since then, he's averaging 27 points, 6 assists, shooting about 50% from the floor in just barely over 30 minutes a game. I think it's 31 minutes a game. So that's a 15-game sample size of Mitchell being the offensive powerhouse that we've come to know.
Yeah, I feel like the most impressive thing, which you just hit on, is that he's doing it in such limited minutes. I know 30 minutes overall sounds like a decent amount, but if you like compare him to how other teams use their star players, they play for like 32 to 36 minutes a game and get numbers that maybe even come close. They do come close to Mitchell's, but like when you counter in the fact that the Cavs don't even need, these are like stats he's compiling within 3.5 quarters of play. Mm-hmm. Like the Cavs are usually blowing out teams at a rate where the stats are going to kind of suffer for the most part. And yes, Donovan Mitchell stunk against one of the Cavs' only 10 losses of the season. And because it was against the Thunder, everyone decided to hit the panic button. But the Cavs are blowing teams out. Mitchell is a huge component of that. Mitchell sets the tone most nights. He's the closer most nights. I would like any worries you have about Donovan Mitchell. It seemed like at the beginning of the season, we're all like, where is he athletically? I think the game against Brooklyn perfectly highlighted where we are with Mitchell's athleticism as he tried to take the body of 3 individual Nets players throughout the night. Yeah, I think Mitchell's back. I think the athleticism is there. I think if he needs to, he can get to his spots. Any worries that fans have about Donovan Mitchell at this point is just, it's probably going to be knee-jerk reactions to one individual game because the body of work over the whole season disputes that there's any sort of slump.
Yeah, the minutes are way down. The athleticism's popping again. If you just compare it to if we're keeping in line with the Knicks, Jalen Brunson plays about 35 minutes a game. Mitchell's at 31. And so I know it doesn't seem like a big difference, 4 minutes a game, but that stuff adds up. And last year, like I think Mitchell has only logged 40 minutes once this season. I feel like he did that like 8 times last year, maybe more. I wish I had the stat right now, but the minutes are way down for Donovan Mitchell. And you mentioned that the Cavs are blowing teams out. This is something that I noticed just looking at the game logs from this last 15 games where Mitchell's been hot. The Cavs have picked up wins by 43 points, 37 points, 26, 23, 22, 21, and 20 points. They've gone 11-4 in that stretch, and only one of their wins was by single digits. They're just destroying teams. And I looked even further, 34 of Cleveland's 46 wins are by double digits. So they've won 34 games by double digits. The Knicks have won 37 games all year. So all that to say, the Cavs are looking pretty good, man. And Mitchell's back. Mobley's arrived as a potential All-NBA player. Ty Jerome is balling. DeAndre Hunter's a great addition. And really everyone on the roster played great. Okoro's back. Wade's back. Javonte Green's on the horizon. It's a great time to be a Cavs fan.
Anytime you have to like argue against Donovan Mitchell and you're using players who play more minutes than what a per 36 stat line is going to show, you're kind of defeating your own argument is what I will say.
Exactly, man. It's just he's been so efficient and he's doing it so quickly, and that goes for everyone on the team, man. It's been such a special season. That's going to do it for this episode of the Junkyard Pod. If you enjoy the show and you want to support us, then drop a like, leave a comment. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media platforms. Make sure you follow Fear the Sword on Playback.tv, where we do live watch parties for Cavs games. We really do appreciate all the support. And with that being said, go Cavs.
I agree. Go Cavs. Brian, will you watch Dune 2 with Jackson?